Hey, good afternoon, everybody. It is August 9th, 2026. We're going to read from Ruth chapter 2, and then we're going to read from Acts chapter 27. All right, so Ruth. Well, yesterday we started our story of Ruth. We started with Naomi, who was a Jewish woman. She goes to Moab because there is a famine, and her husband has gone there to find food for the family and takes her and his two sons. While they're there, they marry two Moabite women. And then Naomi's husband dies, and then the sons die. And Naomi hears that, okay, well, the famine's over in Israel. She gets ready to come back. Her daughters-in-laws want to come with her. And she finally tells them, hey, you know what? There's nothing for you guys back in Israel. You might as well go back home and start your lives over. One of the daughters says, okay, I'll do that. But the other one, Ruth, says, you know what? You're my mother. I'm going with you. Your people will be my people. Your God will be my God. And they return to Israel. And Naomi's friends are surprised to see her. Oh, it's Naomi. And she says, don't call me Naomi, which means pleasant. Call me Mara, which means bitter. So she has kind of lost her faith a little bit. And we're going to see how that plays out today. So let's go ahead and we're going to read Ruth chapter 2. There was a relative of Naomi's husband, a man of great wealth, of the family of Amalek. His name was Boaz. So Ruth the Moabitess said to Naomi, please let me go to the field and glean heads of grain after him in whose sight I may find favor. All right, so we're going to talk about this kinsman redeemer, Levirate marriage, someone in the family that can take care of the widow, someone who can provide offspring so that family name doesn't die out, that family line doesn't die out, and Boaz is one of those people. He's not the only one, but he's one of them. And Ruth says, you know what, I need to go out and get us food, and she's going to do that by gleaning, and it just so happens she ends up in Boaz's field. And she said to her, go, my daughter. So Naomi says, all right, go do that. Then she left, verse 3, and went and gleaned in the field after the reapers. And she happened to come to the part of the field belonging to Boaz, who was of the family of Amalek. Now behold, Boaz came from Bethlehem and said to the reapers, the Lord be with you. And they answered him, the Lord bless you. Then Boaz said to his servant, who was in charge of the reapers, whose young woman is this? So he sees Ruth and he wants to know who she is. So the servant who was in charge of the reapers answered and said, it is the young Moabite woman who came back with Naomi from the country of Moab. And she said, please let me glean and gather after the reapers among the sheaves. So she came and has continued from morning until now, though she rested a little in the house. And that would be like a little shack to keep them out of the sun. Then Boaz said to Ruth, you will listen, my daughter, will you not? Do not go to glean in another field, nor go from here, but stay close by my young women. Let your eyes be on the field which they reap, and go after them. Have I not commanded the young men not to touch you? And when you are thirsty, go to the vessels and drink from what the young men have drawn. Now, again, we said this story happens in the time of Judges, when the people did what they wanted. So Boaz is saying, hey, stay in my field, I can protect you. Don't go after anyone else's field, because people are not as good as they should be at this time. Verse 11, so she fell on her face, verse 10, so she fell on her face, bowed down to the ground, and said to him, why have I found favor in your eyes, that you should take notice of me, since I am a foreigner? Because he heard that she was taking care of Naomi, and she happens to be a relative. And Boaz answered and said to her, it has been fully reported to me all that you have done for your mother-in-law since the death of your husband, and how you have left your father and your mother and the land of your birth, and have come to a people whom you did not know before. The Lord repay your work, and a full reward be given you by the Lord God of Israel, under whose wings you have come for refuge. So a nice little prayer that he offers for her, that she finds success and happiness in her new life. And again, everyone has taken notice of this foreign woman who is taking care of Naomi and is absolutely dedicated to her. Verse 13, then she said, let me find favor in your sight, my lord. You have comforted me and have spoken kindly to your maidservant, though I am not like one of your maidservants. very humble. Now Boaz said to her at mealtime, "Come here and eat of the bread, and dip your piece of bread in the vinegar." So she sat beside the reapers, and he passed parched grain to her, and she ate and was satisfied, and kept some back. And when she rose up to glean, Boaz commanded his young men, saying, "Let her glean even among the sheaves, and do not reproach her. Also let grain from the bundles fall purposely for her. Leave it, that she may glean, and do not rebuke her." So she's getting privileges, eating with the workers, and Boaz even tells his workers, "You know what? Don't question her at all. If she catches up to you guys, just let her take what she needs. In fact, leave some for her." Verse 17, so she gleaned in the field until evening, and beat out what she had gleaned, and it was about an ephah of barley, about 30 pounds. So she got quite a bit. Then she took it up and went into the city, and her mother-in-law what she had gleaned. So she brought out and gave to her what she had kept back after she had been satisfied. So it told us that when she was eating lunch with them, she was keeping some of the food and wasn't eating it all. So she brought some to Naomi so that Naomi could eat. So she's always thinking about her mother-in-law. And her mother-in-law said to her, "Where have you gleaned today, and where did you work? Blessed be the one who took notice of you." So she understands she got a lot. So she told her mother-in-law with whom she had worked, and said, "The man's name with whom I work today is Boaz." Then Naomi said to her daughter-in-law, "Blessed be he of the Lord, who has not forsaken his kindness to the living and the dead." And Naomi said to her, "This man is a relation of ours, one of our close relatives." So yesterday she was Mara, she wanted to be bitter. Today she's praising God and saying, "Well, you know what? God is taking care of us. That you went out to glean and just happened to be in our relative's field, and he noticed you, and he's taking care of us." Verse 21, Ruth the Moabite said, "He also said to me, 'You shall stay close by my young men until they have finished all my harvest.' And Naomi said to Ruth her daughter-in-law, 'It is good, my daughter, that you go out with these young women, and that people do not meet you in any other field.' So she stayed close by the young women of Boaz to glean until the end of the barley harvest and the wheat harvest. And she dwelt with her mother-in-law." And that would put this right about Pentecost, and the Jews would read Ruth at Pentecost, the Feast of the Harvest. We're going to finish this story tomorrow, so until then, let's jump over to Acts. I'm going to go to Acts 27. All right, so Paul was in Caesarea. We have this new governor, Festus. Festus couldn't find anything to write about why he was sending Paul to Rome. Agrippa was there. He had Paul go before Agrippa and state his case, and we saw Paul use it as a chance to spread the gospel even more. They finally have decided, okay, we can't keep him here anymore. He wants to go to Rome. We have to send him to Rome. And that's where we're going to pick up the story in chapter 27. "And it was decided that we should sail to Italy. So Luke is with them again. They delivered Paul and some other prisoners to one named Julius, a centurion of the Augustan regiment. So entering the ship of Adramyttium, we put to sea, meaning to sail along the coast of Asia. Aristarchus, a Macedonian of Thessalonica, was with us. And the next day we landed at Sidon, and Julius treated Paul kindly and gave him liberty to go to his friends and receive care. When he had put to sea from there, we sailed under the shelter of Cyprus, because the winds were contrary. And when he had sailed over the sea which is off Cilicia and Pamphylia, we came to Myra, a city of Lycia, where the centurion found an Alexandrian ship sailing to Italy, and he put us on board." So this would be a royal grain ship. "When we had sailed slowly many days and arrived with difficulty off Cnidus, the wind not permitting us to proceed, we sailed under the shelter of Crete off Salmone. Passing it with difficulty, we came to a place called Fair Haven, near the city of Lycia." So the winds are not with them. They started late in the year, and this is why you don't sail on the Mediterranean late in the year, because the winds are blowing the wrong way. You had to fight all the way. "Now when much time had been spent, and sailing was now dangerous, because the fast was already over, Paul advised them, saying, 'Men, I perceive that this voyage will end with disaster and much loss, not only of the cargo and ship, but also our lives.' Now the only fast for Jews is the Day of Atonement." So this puts it in September, October. Again, winter is coming. You don't want to be out in the Mediterranean trying to sail. Nevertheless, the centurion was more persuaded by the helmsman and the owner of the ship than by the things spoken by Paul. Now the centurion, because it's a royal grain ship, the centurion has the authority to say, no, we're going to keep going. And that's what he does. And because the harbor was not suitable to winter in, the majority advised to set sail from there also, if by any means they could reach Phoenix, a harbor of Crete, opening toward the southwest and northwest, and winter there. So they're in Fairhaven, which is not suitable for a winter anchorage. They're trying to make a winter anchorage. Verse 13, when the south wind blew softly, supposing that they obtained their desire, putting out to sea, they sailed close by Crete. So the weather looks like it's changing for the better for them. But not long after, a tempestuous headwind arose called Euroclydon, which we would call a northeaster. It's coming from the wrong direction, and it's very fierce, and the seas are choppy. They're in trouble. So when the ship was caught and could not head into the wind, we let her drive, and running under the shelter of an island called Clauda, we secured the skiff with difficulty. They brought the little dinghy up. When they had taken it on board, they used cables to undergird the ship, and fearing lest they should run aground on the Syrtes sands, they struck sail, and so were driven. They actually would put bands under the ship and tighten them up to keep the ship from breaking apart. They think they're going to run onto the sandbars, which are notorious in that area, the Syrtes sands. So they take the sails down, they put out anchors, and they're just praying and hoping for the best at this point. Verse 18, and because we were exceedingly tempest-tossed, the next day they lightened the ship. So now they're throwing things overboard to bring the ship up so it doesn't run aground on the sands. On the third day, we threw the ship's tackle overboard with our own hands. So they even threw the ropes and the sails overboard. That's how desperate they are. Now, when neither sun nor stars appeared for many days, and no small tempest beat on us, all hope that we should be saved was finally given up. But after long abstinence from food, then Paul stood in the midst of them and said, men, you should have listened to me and not have sailed from Crete and incurred this disaster and loss. And now I urge you to take heart, for there will be no loss of life among you, but only of the ship. For there stood by me this night an angel of God to whom I belong and whom I serve, saying, do not be afraid, Paul, you must be brought before Caesar, and indeed God has granted you all those who sail with you. Therefore take heart, men, for I believe God that it will be just as it was told me. However, we must run aground on a certain island. So Paul's telling them, hey, I've got a date before Caesar. God's not killing us here. Trust me. Trust me because I trust God. Now when the 14th night had come, as we were driven up and down in the Adriatic Sea, about midnight the sailors sensed that they were drawing near some land. All right, now the Adriatic Sea in our Bible is more in the central Mediterranean than the actual Adriatic Sea that we think of today. And they took soundings, and they found it to be 20 fathoms. And when they had gone a little farther, they took soundings again and found it to be 15 fathoms. So they got a little rope with knots, and they set it down, and they say, well, we're 20 fathoms from the bottom. And then they checked again, they were 15, so they're coming to land. Verse 29, then fearing lest we should run aground on the rocks, they dropped 4 anchors from the stern and prayed for day to come. And as the sailors were seeking to escape from the ship, when they had let down the skiff into the sea under pretense of putting out anchors from the prow, Paul said to the centurion and the soldiers, unless these men stay in the ship, you cannot be saved. Then the soldiers cut away the ropes of the skiff and let it fall off. So the sailors are getting in the boat saying, oh, we're just going to go put some anchors out in the front, which you wouldn't need. They're sailing for the land. And Paul says, hey, you know what? They're trying to escape, and if they escape and leave us all here, we're all going to die. So the sailors cut the little dinghy away and let it float away. Verse 33, and as day was about to dawn, Paul implored them all to take food, saying, today is the 14th day you have waited and continued without food and eaten nothing. Therefore I urge you to take nourishment, for this is for your survival, since not a hair will fall from the head of any of you. And when he had said these things, he took bread, and he gave thanks to God in the presence of them all. And when he had broken it, he began to eat. Then they were all encouraged, and also took food themselves. And in all we were 276 persons on the ship. So when they had eaten enough, they lightened the ship and threw out the wheat into the sea. So it's a very large ship. When it was day, they did not recognize the land, but they observed a bay with a beach onto which they planned to run the ship if possible. And they let go the anchors and left them in the sea, meanwhile loosening the rudder ropes, and they hoisted the mainsail to the wind and made for shore. But striking a place where two seas met, they ran the ship aground, and the prow stuck fast and remained immovable, so they hit one of the sandbars. But the stern was being broken up by the violence of the waves, so the front's grounded, but the back is getting hammered around, and the ship is coming apart. And the soldiers' plan was to kill the prisoners, lest any of them should swim away and escape. If their prisoners escape, then the Roman soldiers have to take their punishment for themselves. So they said, you know what, we'll just kill them right here. But the centurion, wanting to save Paul, kept them from their purpose, and commanded that those who could swim should jump overboard first and get to land, and the rest, some on boards and some on part of the ships. So it was that they all escaped safely to land. May God bless the reading of His Word, and may God bless you. Bye.